In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how I manage all of my photos and my video files as well, because as a traveling landscape photographer, I amass thousands of images. And weirdly enough, this video has probably been the most requested topic I've ever had, even though it's completely boring. But anyway, you've asked for it, so I'm going to show you exactly how I manage my files. Now, I thought what I would do is I would give you a worst case scenario, because the easiest case is that you're at home and you've got your amazingly powerful computer with tons of hard drive space. But when you're on the road, for me anyway, all I've got is a laptop and one of these. It's an external SSD drive. I think this is 2 terabytes, and it connects up to my MacBook Pro via a USB-C cable. What I'll typically do is dump the images from my camera straight onto the hard drive in the MacBook Pro if I have space, and then I'll back it up onto this. It's nice to have your files in 2 different locations because, God forbid, touch wood, if anything should happen to my laptop or my camera gear, perhaps my bag got stolen, I've got a copy of my precious files somewhere. So my typical method, if I've got plenty of hard drive space, is to dump the image files straight onto my MacBook Pro, which has a somewhat faster internal drive than this external drive. External drives are usually always quite a bit slower. So that goes down much quicker than if I just dump things straight through the MacBook Pro or your laptop, PC, whatever, straight through your laptop onto one of these. That's going to be a much slower process, and you've only got it on one device. Now, if I'm at home with my very powerful PC, what I'll do is I'll just dump my images onto an internal SSD drive that is not the same drive as my operating system. Makes things run a little bit faster, and then from there I'll probably back it up onto one of these. Of course I back them up. Alright, so let's get this drive, wang this USB-C in there, and then wang this into the computer. Right, so I've attached this external SSD drive to my MacBook Pro, and I've used the fastest port on the computer. You really want to make sure you're doing that, because otherwise it's going to be really slow. All right, so what you're looking at here is this external SSD drive. That's what's on this. So let's see how full it is. I'm going to right click on that and go get info, and it looks like I've got just under 1 terabyte of data, which should hopefully get me through this trip. So what I'll typically do when I'm traveling is I'll create a folder on my internal drive first, which is descriptive, something like, as you can see here, Iceland 2024. So it's typically the name of the place that I'm going and when I went. Now in this case, my internal hard drive on this MacBook Pro is brimmed. I can't fit anything else on it. So what I'm going to have to do is go straight to this, which is not the ideal scenario. This is going to be quite slow, but I've got no choice because my hard drive is completely full. Now I should have mentioned, first of all, I'm in Finder. This application is Finder on a Mac. If you're on a PC, you just use Windows Explorer. And because I'm here in the Canadian Rockies, I'm going to right click, go new folder, and I'm going to call it Canadian Rockies. Oh, I hate this keyboard on this MacBook Pro. It drives me mental. Canadian Rockies 2024. So if in 5 years time I'm looking through these hard drives trying to figure out where this particular image is, I can remember that it's the Canadian Rockies in 2024. So that is my first point of contact to try and find perhaps a missing file. So that folder there is now my top level folder, right? I'm going to double click on that, and inside of this is where I'll put all of my separate locations and dates. Now, I actually don't care that much about the particular date. I'm not going to say September 28th, whatever. But what I'll typically do is I'll give the next folder the location name and then whichever day it was. So if I had a 7-day trip, it would be day 1. So let's say, for example, I went to Peyto Lake on day 1. I would right click, new folder, give it a name, Peyto Lake, and I'd say day 1. Or you could even put day 1 before. You know, it really doesn't matter. Day 1, there we go. And then at least day 1, 2, 3, and 4 will just kind of line up nice and neat. So that is my location and the day of the shoot. And you might be wondering, should you do this each day at the end of every single day, or should you just do it at the end of the trip and then organize your folders once you know exactly how many days you had? For me, because I have such massive amounts of data, I do it at the end of every single day. So I'll connect this up, I'll connect up my Sony A1, I'll connect up my Osmo, sometimes my drone, multiple devices at the end of every day, because I just can't be having them filling up and then the next day I'm out shooting and they're full and I can't record anymore. But let's say you go on just a 4-day trip and you can't be bothered with downloading all your images and you just want to shoot solidly for 4 days because you know that you're not going to shoot thousands of images. Maybe you only shoot 50 images over that whole 4-day period. Then I would just wait until you get to the end of it. But for me, and for backup reasons, I like to do it at the end of every single day. So the next thing that I do is I go into my day one location folder, and now I'm going to create folders based on the device, right? So I'll right click here, new folder, let's say X2D, so that's the Hasselblad X2D. Maybe I'm shooting stuff also with the Sony A1, so I'll give that one A1. I know I'm going to be shooting stuff with the Osmo because that's my vlogging camera, so I'll just type in Osmo, and maybe I'll be shooting as well with the drone, so I'll give that a folder name. So now I've got 4 empty subfolders within my day one location subfolder inside of my master trip folder, right? So it's a whole bunch of subfolders. But before I copy any of my video files or image files, and this is probably the only good tip that I'm going to give you in this video, what I'm going to do is select all 4 of those subfolders. I'm going to press Command C or Control C on a PC to copy those empty subfolders. Now I can go back here, make a new folder for the next day. So let's say day 2, and we went to Bow Lake, right? Double click on that to go in there, and then Command V to paste those empty folders. By making sure that all of these folders are still empty before you copy them, you've basically got that subfolder structure that you can paste into multiple days, 12 days or whatever, because you can't do that after you've already put video files and raw files in there. It'd just be stupid. You got to make sure that you copy them while they're empty, otherwise you have to do it all over again. I'll do it one more time, so we'll go back here, right click, let's say day 3, I think 2 Jack Lake or something like that. 2 Jack, we'll call that. Go into there and paste in my 4 empty subfolders, and it's super quick. So now that I've got my, let's call it a folder tree, I've got my master folder with all of my subfolders, now it's time to actually connect this up and start downloading some images. Now unfortunately for me, I've only got one super fast USB-C port on this MacBook Pro. Bit of a rip-off that, isn't it? So I'm now connecting this one up via USB-C, switch this on, and it'll be a little bit slow because it's going through a slow port through the computer and into my external drive. But again, what choice have I got? I'll choose mass storage, and we should now be able to see those files showing up on the computer. Now at this stage, I like to switch from Finder over to Adobe Bridge. Now you don't have to use Bridge, you could use Lightroom or pretty much any other raw file viewer of choice that allows you to arrange files. I just like the way that Bridge looks, and I can also integrate it quickly into Photoshop. So you can see down here in my folder tree, there's the Hasselblad X2D camera that I've just connected via USB-C, and this is the folder with all of the raw files in. Now I'll just scroll right down to the bottom and we'll get to some of the images that I shot yesterday. Alright, so we've now got a few images loaded up in Adobe Bridge. So let's just say for argument's sake, I'll just select these ones here. So you can see these are brackets. That's the brighter one, that's the darker one, brighter one, darker one of Bow Lake. So just for argument's sake, I'm going to select just a few. I'm going to click on that, hold down Shift, and click on that last one. So let's just say these are the images I've decided that I want to download onto this hard drive. I'm now going to go right click, copy to. I would not recommend move to unless you absolutely have to use that function. I much prefer copy to because it's not going to mess up anything that's stored on your device. Choose folder. Now I'm going to navigate to the Canadian Rockies folder, and that was Bow Lake, and the device was the X2D, right? So now I'm going to press choose, and that's going to copy those raw files straight into the appropriate folder for the appropriate day and location in the appropriate trip. That makes any sense. And because, as I said, I'm connected through the slow 1950s coal-powered port, it's going to take a while. So while that's copying, basically that is all that I do for every device. So now I would repeat the same process with this device. For this one I wouldn't connect it via USB, I'd just take out the micro SD card there. I'd do the same thing for my Sony A1 and I'd do the same thing for my drone or any other device that I'm using. You just got to make sure that it goes in the appropriate folder. Alright, so that is now finished, and that is all that I do in terms of downloading and organizing the raw files and the video files themselves. But sometimes I'll go a little bit further than that in my organization of what has then been backed up onto this drive. I'll show you what I mean. For the sake of speed, I'm just going to show you this part of the process using some files that are stored on my internal drive. So let's have a look at something where I've perhaps done a bit of focus stacking. So this is my Iceland folder. Let's try this folder here. So as you can see, I've pretty much done the exact same thing that I showed you there. Let's go into, I think I did a bit of focus stacking with the X2D. So let's go down to these images here. So what I like to do usually, if I've done a focus stack, which I can see I've done here in this image, let me just pull this over here. You can actually see some pretty major focus breathing if I go through these frames here. What I will typically like to do is arrange them by giving them a name. So if I determine that this image is a close foreground shot, what I'll do is I'll right click on this, I'll go rename, I'll just click after the last number there, add a hyphen, and I'll call it something like close 4, right? Then I'll hit enter. So I've renamed that file so that it now has close 4 in the file name. And if it was a background focused frame, then of course I'd do the same thing, but I'd just type back G or background or whatever. And that way you can have a group of files and know, oh, well, these are my focus stacks. Another thing that I sometimes do when it comes to focus stacks is I'll try and organize them in a subfolder. So looking at these images, let's just say for argument's sake, there were 6 frames in this focus stack, all the way from background, middle ground to foreground. So I'm going to click on that one there. Let's say that's the close foreground. Let's say this one's the background. Hold down shift and click on that. Now all of those 6 frames are selected. What I can do is move those or copy those to a subfolder. In this case, I'm now going to actually move it. I know that earlier I said don't move your files from the device to your hard drive, just copy them. But now that the images are living on the internal drive, I think it's fine to just move them. So what I can do is right click on this and choose move to, and then go to choose folder. And now I'm going to create a folder inside of that X2D subfolder. I'm going to create new folder and we'll give it a name. Now, if you've done multiple focus stacks, you might want to make a mental note of which one this is. Let's just call this, for argument's sake, focus stack 2. Let's say this was the second stack that I did. Okay, so I'm going to create that folder, and then to move those files into that folder, I would click on choose. In this case, I don't want to do that because this is just a demo, so I'm just going to hit cancel. But what it'll do is just move those raw files from that focus stack that you did into its own subfolder that has a descriptive title so that you can find it when you need to. And then finally, the only other thing that I occasionally do, let's say I'm shooting waves and I've got high-speed burst mode, or birds or something like that, where I'm shooting thousands or hundreds of frames. Really, you want to go through those and just select or rate the good ones. So what I'll do is I'll look through the images like this, find the ones that I like, and then just go right click and I'll just give it 5 stars. And that way I can sort that out. So if I then go to view 5 stars or show 5 stars, it'll only show me those images that I've rated as 5 stars. And that really helps when you've got hundreds or thousands of images that are almost all the same except for that one little moment of perfect timing and perfect focus. I guess there is one more final thing that I want to address, and that is, do I delete the crappers? So those frames that just weren't very good or they were blurred, do I delete them? Well, the answer is no, I don't. I really should. What I should do is rate all of the really good ones as 5 stars and then delete everything else. But I think maybe I'm a photography hoarder. I just keep all of my raw files and then I back them up onto really expensive external drives, and then they just sit in a drawer gathering dust. Probably not the best way of doing things. In fact, I don't recommend that you copy me in that regard, but that is just me telling you the truth. That is how I do it. So there you go. That is how I manage my raw files, my video files, and anything that I create on multiple devices. I know it's pretty rudimentary and basic, but it works for me as a traveling professional landscape photographer. But if you've got some better suggestions, please do me a favor, post a comment down below and let me know, because then maybe I'll adopt your method and then you're responsible for my future mistakes. If you enjoyed this video, do me a favor and give the video the old thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, don't forget to tickle my bell, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.